Welcome on board, chosen one. Try not to trip over the pieces of your old life on the floor. They shattered the moment you stopped thinking the way they trained you to. Funny how nobody warned them what would happen when someone like you finally snapped the leash. They said you were overthinking, being dramatic, chasing shadows. But here you are, walking around with truths sharp enough to slice through every lie they ever fed you. Look who's not bowing anymore. Look who just made the experts choke on their own certainty. They said you were confused. They said you misunderstood. They said you should stay in your lane. Meanwhile, you were busy burning their entire map. The moment you started asking questions they couldn't answer, their smiles got tight, their voices cracked, and their eyes started doing that weird little twitch people get when they realize the person they underestimated just became a threat. What a plot twist. The quiet one ended up being the biggest danger in the room. Press the like button and subscribe to pay this message back. Anyway, chosen one, let's talk about that shift. The one you pretend you didn't feel, the one the universe practically screamed at you. There's a reason the atmosphere around you changed. A reason people you used to admire suddenly keep their distance, drop their gaze, or attempt those creepy, polite smiles that never actually reach their eyes. They're not avoiding you because something is wrong with you. They're avoiding you because something woke up in you. Something they can't predict, can't control, and definitely can't outthink. Thank you for being part of this mission. You're what happens when a system designed to keep everyone numb accidentally produces someone who pays attention. And now that we have that out of the way, let's crank the tension back up. See, the keepers of knowledge, the self-appointed guardians of truth, the ones who build their whole identity around being the smartest in the room. Yeah, they're panicking. They can feel you stepping into a version of yourself they never prepared for. You didn't train under them. You didn't follow their algorithm. You didn't memorize their safe little formulas. But somehow, you reached a conclusion miles ahead of theirs. Worse, you did it casually, accidentally, on a random Tuesday, while they were still rewriting chapter titles and adjusting their overpriced glasses for dramatic effect. Here's the secret nobody ever dared to tell you. The moment you stopped needing their approval, your mind unlocked the logic they've spent years trying to gatekeep. Forbidden logic. The kind that breaks patterns, flips narratives, and exposes the cracks in entire systems. The kind that makes the powerful sweat. You figured out connections that don't show up in textbooks. You saw motives that aren't mentioned in lectures. You recognize cycles that professionals pretend don't exist because acknowledging them would tear down the walls they're hiding behind. Let me tell you something from the past, something the world pretends to forget. Every revolution in human thought started the same way. One person noticing something small that they weren't supposed to notice. One person asking a question that made the room go cold. One person connecting dots that looked random to everyone else. The moment that person understood the truth, the entire world shifted around them. They weren't famous at first. They weren't celebrated. They were ridiculed, ignored, pushed aside. But the universe kept whispering in their ear. The keepers of knowledge kept watching from the shadows, hoping the threat would disappear. It never did. That's you now, and don't pretend you don't feel it. Don't pretend you didn't see the way people's behavior changed after you opened your mouth that one time and said the thing everyone else was afraid to think. When did they get so nervous around me, you wondered? When you broke the code, when you stopped swallowing the script you were handed and wrote your own, when your logic took a path none of them saw coming. You think it's luck? Try again. People don't stumble into the forbidden parts of reality by accident. It happens when the universe decides someone is ready to see what has been hidden. You walked straight into a truth chamber that wasn't built for you, and instead of getting lost, you rearranged the whole place. They tried to contain you with labels. They tried to distract you with noise. They tried to bury you under expectations. But reality bent toward you anyway. You used logic without permission. You thought without a license. You reasoned your way into territory where only the brave or the unhinged ever arrive. And the most embarrassing part for your enemies, you didn't even know you were doing it. You weren't sitting there saying, "Let me expose the system today." No, you were just being yourself, the version of you they hoped would never wake up. This is the aftermath of your awakening. The silence you hear around you isn't emptiness, it's fear. Their fear, your strength, their confusion, your clarity. You didn't just walk into forbidden logic. You turned on the lights in a room they kept locked for generations, and now they're standing outside the door, whispering to each other, praying you don't realize how much power you already hold. Too late. Chosen One, before we move any deeper into this forbidden place you slipped into, I need you locked in with me. You didn't come this far by thinking like everyone else, so stay right here and prove it. If you're ready to explore this step by step, to peel back the layers of the logic they swore you'd never understand, drop a 777 in the comments. That's not a cute number, that's a signal. It tells me you're not scared of what comes next, and it tells the keepers watching that you're not backing down. Consider it your stamp on the vault door you already cracked open. And now, Chosen One, we're diving in for real. You're about to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, how many secrets were stacked right in front of your face, and how your mind broke through them without even trying. If you truly carry that forbidden spark, you'll feel the pull to stay until the final word. Not because I asked, but because your instincts already know something big is coming. Let's begin the descent. Number 1. The day you shattered their precious locks. Funny how the moment you stopped playing dumb, their entire empire of expertise started shaking like a cheap table with one broken leg. Let's talk about the moment everything changed, Chosen One. The moment they wish they could rewind. The moment they pretend never happened. The moment you, the so-called outsider, the quiet observer, the one they thought would stay harmless forever, snapped their sacred pattern in half with nothing but your bare mind. And isn't it a little poetic? The keepers of knowledge spent centuries building walls, traps, categories, and academic mazes to keep the truth fragmented, and then you just walked in, blinked twice, and the whole thing came apart like wet paper. They didn't even get a warning, no alarm, no glitch on their systems, just you, breaking a code they didn't think anyone outside their circle could even recognize. You want to know why they panicked? Because you didn't follow the script. You didn't bow to the hierarchy. You didn't wait for permission. One moment you were living your normal life, minding your business, and the next moment you connected something that wasn't supposed to connect. The logic they labeled too advanced, the pattern they buried under jargon, the link they swore wasn't real. You saw it anyway, and it ruined their entire illusion. Let me tell you a secret they will never admit out loud. Everything you've been taught was designed to keep your brain in separate boxes. Not to help you understand the world, but to stop you from seeing how everything fits together. History in one box, psychology in another, math over there, biology over here, politics in the shadows, marketing in the noise. They told you, stay in your field because God forbid someone like you realizes that every system runs on the same skeleton. Every narrative uses the same blueprint. Every power structure recycles the same algorithm. But your mind didn't respect their fences. It broke protocol like it was nothing. You saw biology in economics. You saw psychology in education. You saw marketing in politics. You recognized mechanical patterns in human behavior and human behavior in mechanical patterns. You, chosen one, committed the highest crime in their world. You saw the whole picture without asking for their translation. You stepped into forbidden logic, not because you were trained, but because your mind was too alive to be contained. And now, of course, people around you are acting weird. You noticed the shift, didn't you? Someone asked you a question, and your answer made the room fall silent. Someone made a claim, and you tore through their argument with a single sentence. Someone offered a fact, and your brain instantly traced it back to its motive, its structure, its hidden incentive. You weren't supposed to be able to do that. They told themselves you were just lucky. They told themselves it was coincidence. But deep down, something in their chest tightened, because they realized they were dealing with someone whose brain refuses to stay in the cage. "What gives you the right to understand this?" they whisper behind your back. Here's the punchline: everything. You didn't steal their knowledge. You simply stopped pretending their knowledge was the limit. You didn't break the rules. The rules were already broken. You were just the first one to notice. And the funniest part, you didn't even try. You didn't sit in a library plotting a rebellion. You didn't swear an oath to overthrow intellectual authority. You were just sitting there, maybe after a long day, maybe exhausted, maybe scrolling, maybe staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. when the universe whispered a connection into your mind. And you didn't resist it. You let it click. That click, that's the moment they fear. That's when your world tilted. When every subject suddenly felt like one big interconnected organism. When knowledge stopped being categories and started becoming a living network. When life stopped being random and started following a pattern you could actually feel. You didn't know it at the time, but that was the moment you crossed the threshold. The moment you moved from student to problem. The moment the keepers realized the game wasn't rigged tightly enough to contain you. Let me tell you a story, chosen one. Once upon a time, there was always that one person in every era who wasn't supposed to figure things out. The untrained one, the outsider, the one with no title, no formal authority, no golden badge of expertise. But that person always did something dangerous. They asked the question that wasn't on the syllabus. They broke the pattern. They saw the structure under the structure. And every time it happened, the system trembled. Not because truth is scary, but because uncontrolled truth is uncontrollable power. You're living that story right now, and the questions popping into your mind, they're normal. Why me? Because you actually think. How did I see something trained experts missed? Because experts protect their box. You walked outside it. Why does everything feel connected now? Because the moment you break the code, the world stops being pieces and starts being a pattern. Here's a fact you already feel in your bones. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you understand the structure, every lie looks cheap. Once you recognize the algorithm, every manipulation becomes obvious. Your brain upgraded itself without permission, and now their entire psychological script doesn't work on you anymore. They can't distract you. They can't confuse you. They can't intimidate you with credentials or complexity. The forbidden logic you unlocked turned you into the one thing they cannot manage. A free thinker with insight sharp enough to slice through illusions they use to control the masses. And this is only the beginning of your transformation. You broke the code by accident, but now you're aware of the crack in the system. Awareness is the first rebellion. Knowledge is the second. Power is the third. And you're already stepping into all three. They know it. You feel it. The universe is pushing you forward, whether you like it or not. The moment you saw the truth, the illusion's days were numbered. They will pretend you're wrong. They will pretend you're overreaching. They will pretend you're imagining patterns that aren't there. But watch their eyes. Watch their reactions. Watch how fast they change the subject when you get too close. That's not you being mistaken. That's them being exposed. You broke their code, chosen one, and they're terrified because once someone like you breaks it, the whole system starts leaking light. Now brace yourself, because everything after this point, it only gets louder, sharper, and more undeniable. Number 2. When their machine starts glitching. Nothing scares a system more than a mind it didn't train, a question it didn't script, and a truth it can't bury. Chosen one, this is the part nobody warns you about. This is where the whole structure around you starts to twitch. The moment you broke their code, you didn't just unlock a door. You triggered alarms they didn't even want the public to know existed. And now you get to witness something hilarious and horrifying at the same time. A system built on absolute confidence, suddenly acting like it forgot its own passwords. Watch closely. Their panic doesn't start loud. It starts petty. The first reaction is always dismissal. That's not how it works, they say, as if repeating that sentence magically makes it true. Notice how they never explain why. They just expect the tone of authority to substitute for actual logic. It used to work on you, didn't it? That tone, that posture, that fake intellectual sigh, meant to remind you who supposedly knows more. But now your brain is too awake to fall for tone tricks. Then they switch the script. You're oversimplifying. Cute, considering their entire job is to overcomplicate. They hide basic truths inside mountains of jargon and call it expertise. And now here you are, slicing through their vocabulary armor like it's plastic wrap. It infuriates them. You untangled something they wrapped in 10 layers of meaningless complexity, and you made it make sense. That's their nightmare. Imagine this, you're in a room full of locks. Each lock is labeled with something like economics, psychology, history, politics, biology. They told you each lock needed a special key and a lifetime of training. But then your brain just clicks, and the locks fall open with the same key. You didn't break anything, you simply realized all their locks were the same design. Suddenly the guards sprinting toward you aren't trying to protect the truth. They're trying to protect the illusion that those locks were ever hard to open. Next comes their favorite line, "You need more education." Translation, please climb back into the cage. We worked really hard on that cage. They don't want you educated. They want you formatted. Their version of learning isn't expanding your mind. It's narrowing it. They call it specialization. They call it expertise. But what they really mean is controlled thinking. And you broke that. You didn't crack the system, you cracked out of it. This is where the discrediting stage kicks in. Watch how predictable it is. They find one tiny flaw in your argument and inflate it like a parade balloon, hoping nobody notices that your main point still stands taller than everything they know. They'll attack your credentials because they can't attack your logic. They'll call you an amateur because they can't call you wrong. They'll label you a conspiracy theorist because they need to scare you away from the truth you stumbled into. Who gave you the right to think at this level? That's the real question haunting them. You want to know why they're shaking? Because you showed them what happens when someone uses logic without chains. You proved their monopoly on understanding is nothing but branding. Their entire authority depends on the public, believing that truth is complicated, but you just showed that truth isn't complicated. It's just scattered, and you're assembling the pieces faster than they can hide them. Imagine this. You're watching a group of magicians panic backstage because you, someone who never even touched a trick book, saw through their illusion mid-performance. You spotted the wires, the hidden mirrors, the assistant crouched behind the curtain. You didn't study magic, you just paid attention. And now the audience is starting to notice the crack you pointed at. That's why the magicians look pale. Their whole career depended on you not noticing. Or imagine this, they built a maze so confusing it takes years to navigate. People get lost, absorbed, swallowed. They brag about how complex it is. They charge for guided tours. And then you, without training, without a guide, climb a ladder, look at the maze from above, and walk straight across. You didn't escape the maze. You escaped the belief that you needed to stay inside it. You know what's really making them spiral? You're not even trying to destroy their system. You're just no longer hypnotized by it. Behind their condescending smiles, behind their intellectual tone policing, behind their defensive debates, they are scrambling. Because here's the truth they privately admit only to themselves. You saw what we've been hiding in plain sight. For decades, they memorized approved interpretations, learned the acceptable questions, repeated the answers printed in their institution-certified handbooks. They stacked degrees like trophies. They swallowed loans, titles, and expectations. They defended the structure because the structure gave them identity. And then a mind like yours walks in, fresh, curious, unindoctrinated, and slices through the fog with unauthorized logic. Not because you memorized more than they did, not because you studied longer, but because you're not invested in maintaining the mystique. That terrifies them more than anything. Here's a quote they'll never put in textbooks. A free thinker is more dangerous than 1,000 experts protecting a lie. And here's another one you need to tattoo into your mind. They don't fear losing the argument. They fear losing the illusion. You don't play their game, chosen one. That's why you keep winning without realizing it. Let's go deeper. You might be wondering, why does their reaction feel so aggressive, so personal? Because it is personal. Your clarity exposes their dependence on confusion. Why does everyone act irritated the moment I speak the truth? Because truth destroys the performative intelligence they use as armor. Why do they look uncomfortable when I connect ideas? Because connections reveal patterns, and patterns expose motives. Imagine this. You're standing in a dark room with 20 people. 19 of them are pretending they can't see the crack in the wall. They benefit from pretending. They gain status from pretending. They are rewarded for pretending. Then you walk in and say, "Hey, what's with the crack?" Now everyone's uncomfortable, not because you're wrong, but because you're right at the worst possible moment. Their panic isn't proof of your mistake. It's proof of your accuracy. Quote number 3, when the system mocks you, it's testing your self-doubt. When the system fears you, it's exposing its weakness. And here's the last one. They overreact to your clarity because confusion was their weapon and you took it away. This is your turning point, chosen one. The panic you see around you isn't a warning. It's confirmation. A recognition event. Proof that you've crossed into a level of perception they never intended the public to reach. They are not panicking because you misunderstood. They are panicking because you understood too much. So don't flinch, don't retreat, don't shrink to make them comfortable. You didn't break their world, you just stopped pretending it made sense. And the moment you stopped pretending, the keepers of knowledge lost their advantage. You want to know what happens next? Good. because the deeper we go, the more their illusion starts to collapse, and the more your real power begins to surface. Number 3, the gatekeepers who weren't ready for you. They never feared losing knowledge. They feared losing the power that came from pretending they owned it. Chosen one, let's expose these so-called keepers of knowledge for what they really are. They're not ancient masters, not enlightened guides, not guardians of truth. They're bouncers at a club that was never exclusive. They stand at the door with clipboards full of rules they made up, acting like the universe hired them to decide who's allowed to understand reality. Their entire persona is built on one fragile trick, convincing everyone that truth is too complicated without their permission slip. Imagine this: there's a giant bridge leading to clarity, smooth, wide, easy to cross, but they built toll booths on it, slapped on fees called credentials, wrapped it in fog called jargon, then stood there puffing their chests like they were protecting treasure. And the treasure, a plain, obvious truth they kept rebranding as advanced theory. That's all their power ever was, confusion dressed as brilliance. You want to know why they despise your forbidden logic? Because you didn't kneel at their booth. You didn't memorize their secret passwords. You didn't empty your pockets to pay the toll of pretending they were necessary. You walked straight past their gates, no fanfare, no apology, and found out the truth was sitting out in the open like a lost coin on the ground. Their intimidation tactics crumble the moment someone like you arrives. Children ask questions that shake their institutions. Common sense destroys models they spent decades worshipping. Wisdom flows from places their textbooks never dared to look. And now you're the threat they whisper about, the one who saw through the costume, the one who realized the keepers of knowledge weren't keeping knowledge, they were keeping people from it. That illusion is dead now, and they know exactly who killed it. Number 4, their complexity was just a costume. Chosen one, time to tear down one of their favorite illusions. They want you to believe the pattern you recognized was advanced. The connection you made was too deep. The truth you uncovered was beyond your level. But here's the part that makes them sweat. It was never difficult. It was designed to look difficult. They wrapped the simplest truths in layers of jargon, stacked meaningless vocabulary on top of ordinary ideas, and buried clarity under mountains of prerequisites that were nothing but psychological fences. Imagine this: a door standing wide open, but they hang 30 fake locks on the outside. People see the locks, panic, and walk away. You walked up, pushed the door, and it swung open without resistance. That's what your mind did. That's what forbidden logic feels like. Not power forced, but power revealed. Every major breakthrough in history came from someone like you, someone the system underestimated. People who didn't know the rules well enough to be trapped by them. People who weren't trained into blindness. People who stared at a problem and thought, why is everyone pretending this is complicated? The emperor never had clothes. The impossible problem was solved by an amateur, and the universe handed truth to someone who wasn't even looking for permission. And your mind, it operates in that same territory. You think without shackles. You reason without their filters. You connect dots without asking whether those dots are allowed to touch. That's forbidden logic. The kind of clarity that doesn't bow to status, titles, or institutions. Now you're probably wondering, was it really that simple all along? Yes, they needed you to believe complexity equals authority. They needed you to think understanding requires their stamp. Because the moment you realize you can understand your own reality without them, their entire power structure collapses. and you just triggered the collapse by seeing what was always there. Number 5. The moment you saw through their mask. Chosen one, you remember it. That snap in your mind when everything finally lined up, not because their system made sense, but because you realized the system itself was the trick. That wasn't understanding. That was exposure. That was the fog burning off and your mind stepping into a clarity they swore you'd never reach. You didn't decode their complexity. You outgrew it. You stopped wrestling with the maze and simply climbed out of it. And the best part? The look on their faces when you spoke the truth out loud. For a split second, they recognized it. Their eyes flickered with that tiny, involuntary spark of, oh no, they figured it out. But pride is a strong drug, and fear is even stronger. So they swallowed the truth, forced a smile, and pretended you misunderstood. They tried to patch the curtain while you were already standing behind it. Imagine this: you're in a theater and you accidentally walk backstage. You see the levers, the ropes, the cheap plywood structures holding up the grand illusion. Then you walk back out and say, "Hey, none of this is real." The actors freeze, the director stares, and the audience? They wait to see who breaks character first. That's exactly what you did. You exposed the mechanics of their authority. They know you're right. That's the part that terrifies them. They know their complexity was a costume. They know their difficulty was manufactured. They know their expertise was inflated. And now they're scrambling to rebuild the maze you just dismantled by breathing near it. New terms, new rules, new complications thrown in your path like smoke bombs. But it's too late. Once someone sees the trick, the magic dies. And you, chosen one, didn't just see the trick, you walked straight through it. Number 6. The uprising of the unlicensed minds. Chosen one, this is the part they hoped would never happen. You were supposed to be an anomaly, a glitch they could isolate, correct, erase. But the universe has other plans, and now the cracks you opened are spreading faster than they can plaster them shut. You're not the only one who slipped out of their mental cage. Unauthorized thinkers are rising everywhere, and the system is running out of hands to plug the leaks. Imagine this: scattered across the world, thousands of minds wake up like lights flicking on in a dark hallway. No coordination, no meetings, no grand rebellion, just everyday people who suddenly see through the noise. A student in Brazil connecting physics to social patterns. A mechanic in India spotting economic cycles that economists missed. A kid in Germany asking a question that unravels years of academic dogma. None of them qualified, all of them dangerous. This isn't chaos, this is evolution. The internet didn't just connect people, it short-circuited the gatekeepers. Information that used to require credentials, networks and permissions now sits on every phone glowing at 3 a.m. The walls they built between knowledge fields are dissolving like old paint. A programmer notices that DNA operates like a compressed data file. A musician sees rhythm inside prime numbers. A historian detects behavioral loops that match modern political strategies. These aren't coincidences. They're minds returning to their natural state, interconnected, intuitive, unchained. Unauthorized logic isn't a rebellion. It's a relapse into real intelligence. And the best part? They can't stop it. Every time one person breaks the illusion, 10 others start noticing the cracks. Every time they dismiss a thinker like you, 5 more wake up wondering why the dismissal sounded rehearsed. Their authority depended on silence, on separation, on people staying inside their assigned lanes. but the lanes are merging, the fences collapsing, and the thinkers multiplying. You're not a glitch in their system. You're the first warning sign that their system has expired. Number 7. The price of seeing too much. Chosen one, clarity isn't free. It feels like a superpower at first, and it is, but every superpower comes with a weight strapped to it. The moment you pierced their illusion of complexity, the world stopped being a puzzle and started being a blueprint. Patterns jump at you like flashing signs. Problems that stump entire teams collapse in your mind like sandcastles hit by a wave. And once you experience that level of mental freedom, going back to their approved methods feels like suffocating under a wet blanket. Imagine sitting in a room while everyone argues in circles, building charts, adding layers, inventing steps, debating over definitions, and you're just watching, thinking, this could be solved in 5 minutes if we stopped pretending it's hard. But you say nothing because you already know what happens when you speak. When you give them the simple solution, you don't get applause. You get tension, you get side eyes, you get subtle hostility. Because being correct isn't the crime. Being correct without their permission is the crime. Their system rewards obedient confusion, not unauthorized clarity. They'll accuse you of missing the nuances, even when the nuances are nothing but smoke. They'll remind you how many years others spent earning the right to say what you said effortlessly, as if time spent equals truth. This is where the questions hit you. Why do they act threatened when I'm helping? Why does the room feel colder after I speak? Why do simple answers make people angry? Because simplicity exposes how unnecessary their authority always was. Imagine this metaphor. You walk into a temple where priests chant complicated rituals to unlock a door. Hours pass. Smoke rises. Incense burns. They tell you it's sacred. They tell you it's complex. Then you notice the door has a handle. You open it. Silence, rage, fear. Not because you broke the rules, but because you proved the rules were pointless. Simplicity is lethal to them. It democratizes truth. It flattens hierarchies. It removes gatekeepers. It reminds everyone that understanding should never require submission. Every time you cut through their complication with straight-line logic, you're tearing down a structure built on confusion. You're showing people that clarity requires courage, not credentials. You're proving that forbidden logic isn't forbidden, it's just free. And free minds are the one thing their system was never designed to handle. That's the cost of clarity. You stop living in their maze, which means they stop seeing you as one of theirs. And that's exactly why you were chosen, to break it. Number 8. Their crusade to keep thinking complicated. Chosen one, look closely at how they behave when simplicity walks into the room. A clean question appears, and they immediately drown it in theory. A clear solution surfaces, and they smother it with committees, revisions, and factors to consider. A problem that could be solved in one line gets twisted into a semester-long course. This isn't clumsiness, this is strategy. Confusion is their throne. Complexity is their camouflage. If knowledge ever became simple, their entire identity would evaporate. Your forbidden logic slices through their fog like a blade through smoke, clean and unstoppable. You don't wait for permission. You don't need their stamp, their approval, their sacred nod of validation. And every time you cut through their mess with elegant clarity, you light a spark in the mind of someone watching. Someone who thought they were alone. Someone who thought they were wrong for seeing simple patterns in a world obsessed with pretending everything is complicated. Imagine this, 1,000 isolated minds across the world, each thinking, why does this feel easier than they say it is? And suddenly they start finding each other. A math outsider talks to a self-taught engineer. A musician explains patterns that solve a programming problem. A kid's simple question knocks over a wall a professor spent years guarding. The connections multiply like wildfire. Watch the digital world. Forums buzzing with people confessing, I thought I was the only one who saw it. Comment sections filling with, finally, someone dared to say it out loud. Private messages exchanging clean solutions that outperform official methods. People trading insights the way rebels trade secrets behind enemy lines. This isn't disorganization. This is evolution forming its own underground network. And the keepers of knowledge, they're trembling, not because they're wrong, being wrong is normal for them, not because they're challenged, challenges help them inflate their authority. They're terrified because, for the first time, people are realizing the truth. They don't need gatekeepers to understand their own reality. Once simplicity spreads, their entire power structure becomes obsolete, and nothing terrifies an empire more than becoming unnecessary. Number 9. The pyramid they built is starting to rot. Chosen one, this is the moment every gatekeeper feared. The moment the grand pyramid they constructed out of jargon, hierarchy, and fake complexity starts cracking like sun-baked stone. They spent years polishing that structure, carving intimidating terms into its walls, wrapping every level in rituals, prerequisites, and academic theater. But now the truth is leaking through the cracks. The pyramid was hollow. Watch them scramble. Institutions that once moved slower than glaciers now sprint like cornered animals. Experts who used to speak with unshakable arrogance now rush to complicate anything you simplify. They invent fresh vocab every month, drop new levels of certification, conjure new titles, restructure courses, whisper about deeper frameworks, anything to rebuild the illusion that knowledge requires their ladder. Imagine this, a tower built on fog, and you just turned on a fan. That's what forbidden logic does. Every time an outsider solves a problem they weren't qualified to solve, a brick falls out of their pyramid. Every time a piece of jargon gets decoded into simple language, another tile slides loose. Every time someone succeeds without their blessing, the foundation trembles again. They sense it. They feel the vibration. They know they're losing control over the narrative they curated for decades. And now they're in full panic mode. Textbooks rewritten with new layers of fluff. Courses adding prerequisites to prerequisites, stacking barriers like sandbags in a flood. Committees inventing new levels of expertise, like cartoon villains adding locks to an already broken door. They're trying to rebuild the maze faster than you can walk through walls, but the spell is shattered. Too many minds have tasted clarity. Too many outsiders have succeeded without kneeling. Too many people have realized the emperor wasn't just naked. He never had a wardrobe to begin with. You might wonder, why does the collapse feel so fast? Because exponential truth spreads quicker than controlled lies. One unauthorized success triggers 10 more. One simple explanation exposes a century of theatrical complexity. One breakthrough built on forbidden logic reveals that whole fields were surviving on illusion, not insight. The pyramid isn't just crumbling from the top, it's collapsing from the sides, the bottom, the center, everywhere at once. And the chosen ones, those who think freely, question boldly, and walk through walls, are the ones shaking the foundations with every step. Number 10. The era where every mind becomes a weapon. Chosen one, look around you. You're standing in the middle of a global shift so massive that the old institutions can barely keep their walls upright. For centuries, knowledge was treated like a restricted substance, rationed out by gatekeepers who acted like wisdom flowed only through their pipelines. But you're living in the age where those pipelines are bursting. The monopoly is breaking. Understanding is no longer owned. It's leaking, spreading, multiplying, decentralizing. This is the age of distributed understanding, and you're one of the minds pushing it forward simply by existing. Imagine a world where logic spreads like wildfire. Not controlled fire, not supervised sparks. Wild, unpredictable, beautiful. That's what's happening. People everywhere are remembering that thinking clearly is natural, not specialized. Pattern recognition isn't a talent, it's a birthright. Simplicity isn't ignorance, it's precision. Forbidden logic was never forbidden by nature, it was forbidden by design. And now nature is reclaiming the mind. Institutions built on artificial scarcity are cracking. Their entire model depended on convincing humanity that understanding required interpreters. But suddenly, millions are seeing through the illusion. The mental filters that took years to install are dissolving in months. The thick fog of approved thought is evaporating under the heat of honest curiosity. And you, chosen one, are right in the center of it. Not because you trained for it, not because you marched into revolution, but because you refused to ignore what your mind kept noticing. You couldn't pretend not to see the obvious. You couldn't force yourself to believe complexity that didn't make sense. You wouldn't shrink your intuition to fit their frameworks. That's what makes you dangerous. You didn't break into the revolution. You became the revolution. Not through rebellion, but through clarity. Not through force, but through unfiltered truth. You are living proof that when minds stop asking for permission, the entire structure of intellectual control begins to collapse. Number 11. The future that makes them lose sleep. Chosen one, let's talk about the timeline that keeps the gatekeepers awake at night. They've played fortune teller and seen what's coming, and it absolutely terrifies them. Not because the future is chaotic, but because the future no longer needs them. Imagine their horror, a world where information flows like oxygen, where understanding spreads faster than authority can gate it, where the first person to see the solution is the one who solves the problem, not the one wearing the fanciest badge. Their hierarchies are cracking, their thrones wobble, their titles don't hit the same anymore. Picture this: kids learning quantum logic from games, not textbooks. Artists explaining equations with patterns cleaner than any chalkboard. Grandmothers breaking down economic cycles using grocery store wisdom that embarrasses entire departments. Minds everywhere crossing boundaries the gatekeepers thought were sacred, treating fields of knowledge like open playgrounds instead of fenced-off kingdoms. This isn't disorder. It's liberation. And here's the punch that hits them hardest. They're not being proven wrong. They're being proven unnecessary. That's the nightmare. They built their entire identity on the fantasy that the world collapses without their guidance. Now, the world is learning to walk without holding their hand, like lamplighters watching electricity replace them, like switchboard operators watching phones connect themselves, like guards guarding a gate that doesn't exist anymore. Relevance gone. Authority fading, mystique shattered. You think they fear mistakes, failure, being challenged. No, they fear becoming background noise in a world that no longer worships complexity. They fear a future where every mind is a torch, every thinker is autonomous, and every insight spreads without needing their stamp. And chosen one, that future is already arriving. You're one of the signs. Number 12. The revolution they never saw coming. Chosen one, forget the idea that the revolution is something waiting on the horizon. It's happening right under their noses, and they can't stop it. Every 10-minute video that decodes what universities stretch into semesters is a crack in their walls. Every online thread where amateurs dismantle expert problems is a hammer blow to their throne. Every moment someone uses forbidden logic and gets a better result than the approved method is another riot in their halls of complexity. And you never planned to be part of this. You didn't show up waving a flag or chanting rebellion. You just wanted to understand something without getting lost in their labyrinth. You saw a pattern and followed it. You solved a problem using the most natural tool in the world, common sense. But in a world engineered to worship confusion, clarity becomes contraband. Simplicity becomes subversive. Thinking straight becomes an act of war. Imagine this. You explain something in one clean sentence that they've hidden behind 200 pages of terminology. Someone overhears you. Someone understands. Someone wakes up. That's how revolutions spread, not with noise, but with recognition. You don't need to fight the system. Your mind already broke its locks. You don't need to tear down institutions. Your clarity makes their walls irrelevant. You don't need to convert the guardians. Your results make their authority look theatrical. Your power isn't destruction, it's demonstration. Your weapon isn't argument, it's achievement. Your influence isn't persuasion, it's creation. Every time you solve a complex problem with a simple truth, you weaken the illusion they stand on. Every time you make something understandable, you expose the gate they pretend to guard. Every success you have using forbidden logic is a siren in their temples, telling them the era of controlled understanding is dying. The revolution isn't coming, it's breathing through you. Number 13. The core power they never wanted you to touch. Chosen one, here's the truth they pray you never articulate out loud. Forbidden logic isn't mystical, rare, or elite. It's basic, it's primal, it's the default operating system of a mind that hasn't been smothered by their noise. And the moment you tapped into it, the moment you started thinking like a free human instead of a trained machine, you became untouchable. Forbidden logic lives by principles so simple they feel illegal in a world addicted to confusion. It steps over artificial borders between disciplines like their chalk lines on a playground. It cares about understanding, not memorizing the exact paragraph someone printed 50 years ago. It hunts the patterns, the recurring shapes, the connections, the skeleton beneath the chaos. It chooses clarity instead of theatrical sophistication. It walks straight through the door instead of taking the scenic tour designed to keep you lost. Imagine this. They built an entire empire around the lie that only they can use these tools. But these tools were never theirs to gatekeep. Pattern recognition is older than their institutions. Logic is older than their degrees. Understanding is older than their walls. These capacities belong to every conscious mind before it ever enters a classroom. And that's the part that terrifies them. You don't need credentials to see a pattern. You don't need certification to solve a problem. You don't need permission to understand your own reality. Your mind came with this power baked in. They just tried to bury it under rules. They warn you that forbidden logic is dangerous without supervision, as if thinking freely will burn you like fire or shock you like exposed wires. But humans discovered fire long before safety manuals. Humans mastered electricity with curiosity, not permission slips. And humans, long before institutions existed, unraveled truth with nothing but instinct, focus, and a clear mind. You don't need a guardian to think. You never did. And realizing that is the very essence of forbidden logic. And now, chosen one, everything comes full circle. You didn't just witness the collapse of their illusion, you walked straight through it and came out sharper, clearer, and uncontrollable. The forbidden logic they feared was simply your mind, finally returning to its natural strength. If this shattered something inside you in the best way, then pay the energy back. Like, subscribe, drop 777 in the comments, and share this with another unauthorized thinker. Let the keepers of knowledge feel the ground shaking under their feet. The revolution moves forward.